Welcome to the webinar. This is Susan Heyman with Enviro Issues, and I will be facilitating tonight's expansion group meeting. We're going to, in about 5 minutes, yet the audio, you will do that, be sure to hear your opinion, but you won't be able to talk. Remind will start muted, and we'll unmute you if you raise your hand and if we call on you. So I'll be managing the muting and unmuting of folks tonight. But very glad you are here, so please just stand by and we'll be joining you in just a few minutes. Hello everyone, this is Susan Heyman facilitating the focus group meeting this evening. This is the expansion group. Thank you all for joining us. We have a few other people who are registered and have not dialed in yet. So we're just going to give another minute or two and then we will go ahead and get started. If you have your audio pin, if you would do that so that we'll be able to hear from you if you decide you'd like to make a comment or say or make a question. Stand by and we'll be started in a couple minutes. Thanks. All right, good evening everyone. This is a focus group meeting for the expansion group. We're really glad that you joined us this evening. Hopefully while you've been waiting for us to get on board here, you've been reading the instructions here that you do need to enter your audio pin in order for us to hear you. You can hear us, but we won't be able to hear you. We will have all of the phone lines muted unless I unmute them, and I would unmute them if you raise your hand and have a question or comment at the appropriate time, and we'll be happy to do that. If you do have any technical difficulties, or if you've been having them, I hope you're contacting Brett Watson. His email address and phone number are on the screen, and he is also available for texting as well. So let's go ahead and move on then. So just a quick orientation to webinars for those of you who perhaps may be new to this format. Wanted to give you just a couple of pieces of information. First of all, again, the audio mode that you are in is listening only. If you're in on, that shows me that I can mute and unmute you. If you don't enter in the PIN, I wouldn't be able to unmute you. So please do that if you would be interested in heard this evening. A couple things about logistics. In order to know, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. If you want to actually speak, we'll ask you to raise your hand, and you can see on the screen there, you have a little control panel, and there's a little orange button that allows you to bring that control panel in or out so you can keep it visible. And there's a little hand, and if you click on that hand, it will show up to me in the participant attendee box that your hand is raised. So let's just test that. Why don't you, those of you that are on and listening, if you would please raise your hand and we'll see how many hands we get up here. Let's just take just a moment. So click on that. Let's make sure you can raise your hands. Give you just a minute here. And then you just click your hand again to lower your hand. And if you forget to do that after you have spoken, then we'll certainly drop your hand for you. So again, that's an important thing for you to know. The other way that you can communicate with us this evening is to type in a question. So if there's a time where you have a comment or you have a question and you'd rather not say it, then you can send it to us, and where you type your question is where the little arrow is pointing, and then you send that. Your question comes to me as the organizer, and then I'll be able to make sure that one of our city staff who are in the room here, and I'll introduce in just a moment, are able to respond to your question. If you do submit a question that way, I won't say who it was that submitted the question unless you specifically ask me to. Otherwise, I'll just read the question and get the answer, and then we'll move on to the next question. We will provide people an opportunity for follow-up questions, but we also have a limited amount of time and want to get to as many people as possible. And again, if you need technical support, please jot down Brett's email address or his phone number, and then you'll be able to get a hold of him during the meeting. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce who's in the room with me, and then we'll run through the agenda. So again, this is Susan Heyman with Enviro Issues. Sophie Cottle with Enviro Issues is in the room with me, helping with the webinar. Brett Watson is also listening in this evening to help with the technical issues. We have Nick Welch with the Office of Planning and Community Development, and Jeff Wenlatt, who is also with the Office of Planning and Community Development for the City of Seattle. So they will be the ones who will be fielding your questions and comments this evening. So our agenda, and this should be familiar to you, it's very much what we sent out earlier. It's to share feedback received on the draft zoning maps and provide you an opportunity to ask some clarifying questions and provide any additional feedback that you might have. And some of that feedback could be how well the city has characterized your feedback so far, or if there's something new that maybe hasn't been raised before. So we're about done with our meeting overview and announcements. We'll have some clarifying Q&A on the zoning maps. Then we'll discuss the feedback. So does the summary of feedback reflect the input provided? Are there any themes or concepts that are either mischaracterized or missing? We'll have a brief opportunity for observer comment, and then we've asked the city to provide some next steps as far as what you might expect going forward with the focus group, as well as just generally your public involvement opportunities with HALA. So that is what we have for our agenda this evening, and the city is going to be providing a little bit of information prior to us going to the zoning map Q&A. So I think if you are ready for that, then we'll go ahead and I will turn this over to Nick.
Great, thanks Susan. This is Nick Welch. I'm with the Office of Planning and Community Development, for those of you who don't know me. To begin, we just want to quickly look back at the process you all have been through over the last several months, now that we're getting towards the end of the focus group process. We began in May with several meetings where we discussed and then reviewed the Mha Principles. That was July, and those were the principle statements that guided the city making draft zoning changes. In September, we shared the first 5 example maps with you, and you had a chance to review those. There was at least one from each focus group, and get familiar with how the draft zoning changes would look once they're on paper. In October, the next month, we posted all of the urban village maps online at hala.consider.it, and they were available for both focus group members and the general public to review and discuss. And then for the focus group meeting in October, each focus group reviewed the draft zoning maps for the urban villages that they represent. And the feedback from those meetings are what we have summarized in the draft document that you received last week. And for this November webinar, we are here to get your feedback on that preliminary summary. That's our first take at capturing the comments we heard last month. And we're, as Susan said, we're interested to hear if there are other ideas and themes that we've missed or that we should capture a little bit differently. We also wanted to remind everyone that one of the key core principles that we've had throughout this process is to evaluate MHA through a racial equity lens. This is one of those core principles that are guiding our zoning changes to put MHA into effect. For the focus groups, this began in May when we had a training on the city's Race and Social Justice Initiative, or RSJI. And it's something we've intended to keep in the forefront of this process and will continue to do so going forward. So to that end, it's worth thinking about a few questions that we think are important to keep in mind as we review these zoning changes. And you can see some of those on these slides. That includes things about who's involved in this process currently, or if they're not here, who should be. For the different ideas and feedback that we receive that you all offer, it's important to think about the trade-offs of all of those suggestions and the implications for different groups when we are thinking about how we can make zoning changes to put MHA into effect. And all along, the focus groups have done a very good job of being respectful and thinking about other perspectives as we discuss these issues. That's been very helpful, and it's something we intend to keep going forward.
All right, so Anne raised her hand. Can we just take a quick question if Anne's got one here? And I think we can unmute Anne. So Anne, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hi, this is actually Anne and Ratna from Crown Hill Urban Village. We're together. And in regards to the racial social justice lens, I just wanted to re-emphasize, and I believe that was very strongly represented in our expansion urban village, that we believe that equity comes from the whole city contributing, and the fact that this is not truly equitable in the sense of that it's the urban villages that are contributing to the affordable housing, and the rest of the neighborhoods like like Magnolia or Madison Park are not part of providing affordable housing, is something that was raised continuously. And we just wanted to point that out as we're on this slide again.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Any other? Anyone else have a question or comment on this slide, or just the overview of where we've been? Okay, not seeing any then. Let's go ahead and what we'll do in order to facilitate the clarifying Q&A is provide a little overview of what the city heard from the feedback, and that might help stimulate a little bit of the questions you might have. So we're going to go ahead and get this up on screen here. This is a document that was sent out to you, so hopefully you have this handy, but in the event that you do not, we've got it on screen. So Nick, are you speaking?
Sure, yeah, and this is a good segue from Ratna's comment just a moment ago. These are some sort of general themes that we heard from the expansion area group that were in general applied across various urban villages. And we'll obviously get into the map-specific comments, but it sounds like we already might have one that we should add with regard to equity and what that means for different neighborhoods contributing to affordable housing, to Ratna's point from a moment ago. Some of the other things we heard in general were interest and concern about infrastructure and how growth will either contribute to infrastructure improvements or concern about gaps that exist today, whether that's sidewalks or transit that is running at capacity. We've heard a lot of interest in addressing displacement. To the point about equity, the focus groups have been continually expressing that MHA should be implemented as a tool to address displacement, to try to reduce displacement in Seattle as we grow as a city. We heard quite a bit of support for zoning changes that would allow more people to live very close to transit, especially light rail stations in Columbia City and Rainier Beach, and the one that will open in a few years at Roosevelt. In several urban villages, there was support for zoning changes or development standards that would encourage housing for a wide range of different household types, including multi-generational households and large households where a lot of people are living together. That's something we've heard across various meetings and various urban villages. And then lastly, there was a lot of interest and strong suggestions from the focus groups about recommending that the city provide ample notice to the residents and the property owners that will be affected by these zoning changes. And just to let the group know, that is something the city has done. Some of you may even have received a mailer last week or will receive one this week announcing the upcoming open house meetings that the city has scheduled in December and January. And that's one way that we're trying to make sure everybody who needs to be aware of these changes has an opportunity to learn about them and share their input.
Right. Thanks, Nick. We are getting a couple of questions that have come in. These happen to be from observers, so we're going to hang on to observer questions and just, I didn't say this at the beginning, but we're giving preference to the focus group members, but we certainly hope to be able to address the comments that the observers may have towards the end of the time here today. And if we end up having some time and can take some of these questions, we will do that as well. So just looking to see if we have any other questions from focus group members. It looks like we have one that's from a focus group member that we have comments on these themes, but would like to let others input first. So again, if there are other focus group members that have other comments about themes, this is your opportunity to hop in here. And if not, then I would say if there are other comments from the person who sent me that message, feel free to raise your hand. Ann.
All right. Hi, this is Ann. Are we there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Hi. Well, just in regards to the themes, we just had some clarification we're hoping could be put in here. And in regards to the displacement, the addressing displacement, we wanted to make sure that we're addressing displacement in all urban villages and not just ones that have been flagged on 2035 as high risk.
Okay.
Okay.
Got that?
Thank you. We'll take that down.
Yeah. Regarding density near transit, we wanted to make sure that transit stations was defined as a light rail station. In the conversation, I do remember this conversation, and I'm glad you listed Columbia City and Rainier Beach and Roosevelt because those are light rail stations. But I'd like to make sure that that comment's not misread as just including bus stops.
Okay, we've got that. Thank you. All right. I think not seeing any other hands or questions from focus group members, I think maybe we should go ahead and see if we just have any general Q&A, unless you had something else, Nick, generally about themes.
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay. So let's go ahead and just take a moment. In the handout here that was sent out to you, there are a number of maps, and without getting into the deeply into the feedback piece of it yet, just wondering generally if there are questions that people have overall about the maps, if there's anything about just being able to read the maps, or just general clarifying kinds of questions as opposed to really getting into the substance of whether or not you agree with what's on the maps. Any clarifying questions that people have out there? All right. Well, they might just be clear as a bell then. So not seeing any questions that way. So what we'll do then is go ahead and move into talking more specifically about the feedback that has been received to date. And what we can do is, as people either raise their hands or shoot us a message and let us know that there are specific maps they would like us to focus on, then we can go to those maps. did you want to provide any other kind of background to the maps themselves before we get into any questions that people might have about the feedback?
One thing I'll mention, if you didn't notice it in going through this document, but each of the comments, for the most part, in general, they are numbered, and then there's a corresponding number on the map itself. This isn't always the case if there was a general comment that wasn't related to a specific location, but that's the sort of the symbols that we've been using in this document. You probably all noticed, but just to make sure everyone understands that.
And I think I noticed in some cases on some maps that there might be a comment or suggestion that was numbered, but it wasn't specifically on the map, but it seemed like it was in general for the whole map. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So again, looking towards the focus group members who are on the call to see if you have any questions or comments about any of these maps. And rather than going through them one at a time, what we'd like to do is just be responsive to the questions you may have about any particular map. We did this a little bit at our October meetings where you guys put dots up for those areas that you were most interested in talking about. So I'm looking for either hands or questions or comments. I've got a number of them, again, from observers, but I'm not seeing very many from or any other additional ones that are coming from focus group members. So looking for either raised hands or questions. And again, I'm happy to go to any of these maps, so just point to me which map to go to. Well, let's just go ahead then, and since we don't have people necessarily pointing us to a map. Oh, yep. Andrea, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah.
We can hear you.
Oh, just if we could go to that. I don't have the copies of them. I just am looking at your screen, so because I just see Columbia City right now.
Okay.
I'd like to see Roosevelt and 130th. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hang on just a minute. All right, go ahead. Did you want to take a peek at this?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. Yeah, I don't have any specific comments yet because I just started looking at it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and mute you then, just in case. But please raise your hand if you have a question. This again, these were emailed out. They were sent in a link actually, and that was on Thursday or Friday.
That was on Friday. On
Friday of last week. So if you have it, that might enable you to hop over to whatever map you're most interested in and be able to study that while we're potentially on some other maps. While we're on this map, oh, it looks like Lori's hand is up. Let's go ahead, Lori.
Can you remind me, I apologize, I've missed a couple of meetings, but can you remind me in the residential small lot with the M code, can you remind me what the maximum density is in those areas?
Sure. The proposal for the residential small lot zone would be to allow one unit, one house, for every 2,000 square feet of lot area. And those could be separate structures, small cottages on one lot, or something we call tandem housing, or they could be attached, but the density limit would be 1 unit per 2,000 square feet of lot area.
Did that help, Lori?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Charles, your hand was up for a minute and then it went down again. If you would like to hop in here, just put your hand up again, please. Okay, let's go to Charles.
Question is,
go ahead.
Is that density limit for RSL set in stone, or is that part of the process moving forward that may be revised?
This is Jeff. I think it's not set in stone. It's something that we're taking comment on. I think we have not heard a lot of we haven't heard a lot of comments that are opposing a 1 per 2,000 square foot lot area. So if you have a suggestion, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering, you guys probably don't know off the top of your heads, but you know, a lot of those lots that are in the urban villages, especially Roosevelt, I'm not quite sure about the other ones, but they might be less than 4,000 square feet, in which case zoning to RSL doesn't have any increase in density. So I don't know what the pros and cons of are, you know, having maybe 1,500 square feet or whatnot, but just seems like in an area like Roosevelt that is going to have very good quality transit, you might consider some different thresholds.
Okay, thank you, Charles.
Thanks, Charles. Okay, okay, we're going to zip over to Crown Hill. Give us just a second here. Actually, that was a real quick second. It was the very next map. So let's see. Is that Ann and Ratna?
Yes, that will be us.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to just focus in on on the varied opinions. Number 1, this is a misread. We went through our notes and from the focus group whiteboard, and it was not especially, but example. So the word especial is incorrect. This was supposed to state that it's an example. So the accurate statement would be that many Crown Hill residents do not support extending NC zoning to a full block east. NC zoning along Mary Avenue Northwest, south of 83rd and 16th Avenue Northwest would be incompatible with the existing residential character.
Okay, Ratna, this is Nick. I want to make sure I heard what you were saying correctly. So at first it sounded like you were saying that it's not especially south of 85th, but ample south of 85th. Is that correct?
Ample, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, and then was the second sentence also mischaracterized? Was there an area where we were supposed to say that it was compatible?
No, I think the rest was okay. Sorry, we got that one wrong. Well, wait a second.
No, there isn't an area that is compatible, no. Not on Mary or on 16th, yeah.
Okay, I think I just misheard you as you were reading it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Not at all, my mistake. Okay, we'll make that change.
Yeah, we have about 2 pages of notes, which we'll email you with the pages and points.
Excellent, thank you for doing that. And while we do want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to weigh in here, if you have other thoughts, we're very happy to hear those this evening, Ann and Ratna. So I'm looking for other focus group member hands or comments. Again, we have a number of them from observers, but I'm looking for the focus group members themselves to point us to a map, or if you have, you know, again, the focus here is really, did the city get the feedback right? And you just heard a conversation about Crown Hill, and maybe there was a way to correct the characterization of the varied opinions. So did the city get the feedback right? Is that correct from your understanding and participation? Or is there something that is, or is there something that is missing as far as feedback that should be captured about any of these proposed zoning maps? So looking to the focus group members to either send me a question or a comment or raise their hands. Andrea, did you want to go back to Roosevelt now that you've had a chance to, or you looked at it briefly? Be sure to raise your hand if you would like to head back over there. Okay, just wanted to note too, for those of you that are observers and are sending in questions and comments, those are definitely going to be considered by the city, and if it ends up being relatively quiet here, then we can certainly move into getting some of those questions and comments daylighted here. So not wanting you to feel that you're being completely overlooked in any way. Lori, go ahead.
I'm curious about that comment on the Rainier Beach page on number 2 about zoning increases extending along Martin Luther King Way. It seems like a fairly small area that doesn't connect the two, the Othello map and the Rainier Beach map. And I'm just curious about the thought behind whether or not that's intentional or what. It must be because there's not a transit station there, but it just seems like it's not that much space to consider expansion.
To clarify, Lori, thanks for that. Are you wondering why the initial draft didn't show zoning changes along MLK?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering about the lack of any proposed zoning changes in between that Othello map and the Rainier Beach map.
Got it. Okay, good question. In general, the maps show zoning changes wherever there is already multifamily or commercial zoning. So we have that on some arterials like Rainier, but on that segment of MLK, it's actually single-family zoning between Rainier Beach and Othello. Some of that is within the approximately 10-minute walk of the light rail station, and in those areas where you're close to transit, we did generally show some zoning change in the draft. But the comment here was that between those two 10-minute walk areas, it's single-family zoning today, and there was a suggestion and general agreement that that could be a place for multifamily or commercial zoning that could add a little bit of activity along MLK, even though that is not within that 10-minute walk shed. Did that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And if you have other thoughts about that approach, either the comment or how we've captured it, we would love to hear that.
Oh, it's just my curiosity, really. And just forgive me if this is already well understood, but my understanding, as I try to explain this to my neighbors, is that this doesn't mean that once these zoning changes get approved, that our neighborhood instantly changes. It just means that if my neighbor decides to sell their house and it's bought by someone who wants to put 2 houses there, they can, or whatever the new zoning changes allow.
Yes, that's correct, and that's a really helpful point. The zoning never requires anybody to change or to develop their property, but it does set the rules for how somebody can redevelop if they choose to. So in these maps, there are some areas where, to take an area, for example, that is single family today, where we've shown residential small lot or another multifamily zone, over time, development could happen that would look a little different than what is allowed to happen there today. But you're right that it would not mean overnight that things change or that they have to change. The other thing worth noting is that these zoning changes would put MHA requirements, mandatory housing affordability requirements, into effect, so that when that development happened in the future, there would be a mandatory contribution to affordable housing. Whereas today, even in single-family zones, we do see redevelopment, but that development is limited to just one house and it doesn't have a contribution to affordable housing.
That's helpful to me as I think about trying to explain that to my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question and for reaching out to your neighbors. That's really helpful.
Okay, thanks for that, Lori. Ann?
Hi, this is Ratna, and this question is for Nick. It's a follow-up on our last in-person meeting that came up in our group and was shared amongst other members. And what I'm talking about is the request to view metrics involved with each village. Participants asked to view figures related to development capacity analysis, targets, and expected units, as well as the overlay of existing projects to truly reflect how much capacity actually is there for housing to be built. While it's not feedback on the map, there was general interest in understanding what that is, because that would form opinion on the maps and what the questions or input would be on the maps. And last time we spoke, you mentioned that that was going to be work in progress, and what's the progress then?
Good question. Thanks for bringing that up. There has been interest in that, and it is something we are getting pretty close to having ready as an analysis that we can share. Coming soon is the best answer I have right now. And when we have that available, and when we have really any future analysis or documents that relate to MHA available, but this one specifically, we will send an email to the focus groups to let everybody know that there's a new piece of information for them to consider. So thanks for asking.
Nick,
that's coming soon.
Yeah, are you still, am I still on speaker? Okay.
Yes, you are.
So I guess the thing is, so that shapes feedback on the map. So it's kind of important to be able to have the bandwidth to get that information, the coming soon piece, to provide you, I guess, educated feedback on the maps.
Yes, and this is a little preview of what we will mention at the end of the meeting in terms of next steps. But what I would say is we will have some analysis, some metrics about the first draft of zoning changes pretty soon, and you'll still have an opportunity to review that and give us comments in a few ways. One is at the December 10th drop-in hours that we're hosting, if you'd like to come then. But you can also email us directly with comments or, once you've had a chance to review that, and we won't be finalizing the focus group summary before you all have a chance to review that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to head over to the North Beacon Hill map now, and we have a question. In regards to the Beacon Hill map, reaffirm number 4. There is a very large risk in this neighborhood for displacement, and affordable housing is critical. So Nick or Jeff, any comments on that?
Well, I think we want to start by just acknowledging that MHA is a tool to address displacement, and anytime after these changes are made that development occurs, it will include some dedicated affordable housing. So that's part of the picture, but we absolutely acknowledge that there's a lot of other tools that are needed through other programs and direct investments. So those are part of the mix as well.
All right, so the person who submitted that question, if you have any follow-up on that, then be sure and let us know, and we'll be happy to come back to that. So in the meantime, we are going to go over to Northeast, let's see, yep, Northeast 130th Street, and we have a question there, or I guess a request to see the expansion areas at 130th and 145th. On the map. So do you guys want to say anything about that?
Sure. Just as a reminder, this is an area that today is not an urban village. This is an area that will likely, or perhaps at this point will surely have a light rail station now that the sound transit ballot measure has passed. But the timeline for that is still pretty long, a long way into the future. as part of the Seattle 2035 Comprehensive Plan update, this was one of the areas where we considered and got feedback on creating a new urban village based on that future light rail station, which would be right at 130th and I-5. Today, the area does not look really like most other urban villages, and so the map you see here does not show a zoning proposal to the extent that the other ones do, but it does ask, or we have asked for feedback about how we might begin planning for making this an urban village in the future. And there was some initial feedback that is captured on this page about where housing could go, where might opportunities be for a neighborhood center and that sort of thing. And then very quickly to the question about 145th, there is a station planned, I believe, at 148th in Shoreline, but the City of Seattle has not proposed a expansion area or a new urban village in that area. The urban village in Seattle would be at 130th. If there are questions about that, we can definitely go in deeper.
All right, so again, if you have any follow-up on that, please be sure to raise your hand or send us a message. So what I think we'll do is maybe take a look at a couple of the maps that people haven't spoken about tonight, just to be sure that we don't have any particular questions about those. So let's see, where would you guys most like to go to next here? We've touched on Crown Hill and Green Lake Roosevelt and Rainier Beach, and you want to go to Othello? Okay. All right, so we have Othello up here. So just wondering if there are any questions or comments about this. Is there something in particular, Nick or Jeff, that you would want to test with these guys?
Well, we could just hit the highlights of some of the comments about Othello. Again, this was one of the areas where we heard strong support for if there were going to be greater zoning increases and MHA amounts, that should be closest to the light rail station. In addition to 130th, the Passage of Sound Transit 3 also highlighted to us that South Graham Street is a potential additional light rail station in this area, and that dovetailed with some focus group comments that the area around Graham Street could be considered for urban village boundary expansion, and the map would look a little bit different if we did that.
Okay, so we have a follow-up back on the Northeast 130th map, but before I hop back over there, is there any comment or questions about Othello? Okay. Lori, were you on Othello?
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's anybody from that expansion area on the call.
Let's see. There is not.
Yeah, I'm wondering, it just feels like I know that Kathy's on the phone, but I'm not sure how many others from, the Othello and Rainier Beach and Beacon Hill made it to the call. So I would encourage the city to solicit feedback from focus group members in another way.
Okay, and if you click on the attendee list that's in your control panel, you will be able to see who is on the call. So that will also help. But yeah, certainly appreciate that that input. All right, so if there's nothing else right now on Othello, then we'll head back to 130th and address that question, and then move on to a couple others here before we get to next steps. So let's see. Let me see if I can find this question. It was a written question. Just trying to find it here. So the question is, or the comment, I would love to see how 130th and 145th could work together to act as an urban village since it is a shared area. Any thoughts on that, you guys?
Well, I think that's something we could take a look at. We'll have to do a little more research. I think we'll have to zoom out and look at what those connections could be like. As Nick mentioned, an urban village at 145th or 148th wasn't studied in Seattle 2035. So that would be a little bit of a different direction, but we can certainly analyze it.
All right, and let me just note, because there was a question about it as to whether this information was going to be posted. So this particular document that we're looking on screen will be posted. It was distributed to focus group members, and so it will be on the HALA website, correct?
It is already posted
okay.
on Friday when it went out to the focus groups. It also went onto the focus group section of the HALA website. For anyone new to this who's listening, that's seattle.gov/HALA. And then there's a tab on the top right that says focus groups. And all the material that the focus groups have reviewed is posted there. So we have the draft summary that we're looking at here for the expansion area group, as well as the hub urban villages. Their meeting is tomorrow night, their webinar. And then shortly after that, we will have the drafts for the medium and lower density urban villages as well. So those are available for both focus group members and the general public to review.
Thanks for that. And also, we will be posting the recording from this webinar and the slides. So if for those who did not have a chance to participate or who have come on the line later in the call, then that will help catch you up. And again, for those who have joined who are observers, since this is a focus group meeting, we're really pushing all of our preference towards those folks that are part of the focus group. We are going to provide a couple of minutes here for observer comment in just a little bit, and I'll see how many of you actually want to make a comment. But any of the written comments that observers are providing will certainly be considered by the city, and they will get a copy of all of those. So your input will be received for sure. So just checking back now, again, we're on 130th. There have been a couple other areas we haven't touched on yet. Do you guys from the city want to point us to a map or two before we need to move on?
Let's quickly look at Columbia City, which is the first of this series of maps in the document.
Okay.
This is another area that has a light rail station where there was general support for additional height in the zoning right around the light rail station and creating opportunities for more housing there. There was general support for changing the commercial zoning, which tends to be pretty auto-oriented and allows things like drive-throughs and tow truck lots, to neighborhood commercial in a few places in this urban village, which would encourage more pedestrian-oriented development. This is also an example of where there is a designated landmark district, a historic business district in Columbia City that has an official city designation, where our current draft does not show zoning changes and therefore no MHA requirements in those areas. And that's something where we recognize the focus groups have offered a mix of opinions. Some people encouraging that MHA should apply in those areas, and others saying for historic preservation reasons that it should not.
And I'll note that we do have a number of comments from an observer about Columbia City area, so that will be good feedback to get as well. All right, we are about needing to move on. We have another question from a focus group member to go to page 4. Actually, let me do this so that we don't make people nauseous with my spinning around on the pages. So I take it that's page 4 of the handout. So these are the MHA principles. Mm-hmm. So let me go ahead and pull these up. And the question, let's see, I'm looking for a hand on the question unless somebody sends me a question for this page 4. So the person who requested this, Anne, go ahead.
Hi, Anne. This is is just a general a question, possibly comment, feedback. It's about the header, community-generated principles that guide HALA implementation. And I noticed that the community-generated principles that were given to us in early handouts are very, very similar, with maybe just a couple minor changes to the ones that are listed on this handout. And I was wondering if they are indeed community-generated, and if it might be more appropriate to say principles on which community gave input. But it would be helpful to know in what ways they were community-generated. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
So this is Jeff here, and we'll certainly consider that suggestion. Just as a bit of a response, staff did take a first cut at drafting the principles, but I do think that we did our best to listen at various community meetings that occurred even before that first cut. That included the Seattle at Work meeting that was held in January, as well as other outreach we did as a part of earlier HALA process. And just from conversations we had with communities around the city, things that they felt were important. So we'll take a look at that wording, but we do feel like we drafted those based on things we had been hearing.
Any feedback on that, Ann?
Yeah, so this is Ratna. Thanks for the clarification, Jeff. I think that's really helpful. I think from our perspective, this is the document from the, I guess we understood that this is the document from the community focus group, and so we did not feel that it was necessarily driven by us because we were given already pre-made ones that we provided feedback on. So I guess as long as it's clear that they were not generated by us, but that it came from before, I think that would help clarify that.
Okay, thank you both. There's a brief paragraph at the beginning of page 4 that tries to capture how these principles came to be and what their purpose was, and we will look at that language to try to be as clear as possible.
All right, thanks you guys. I'm going to just ask for a couple of focus group members I haven't heard from, just to be sure that you have an opportunity, if you want to either shoot us a message or raise your hand. So I'm looking for Faduma or George or Kathy. You guys have been pretty quiet, so just want to be sure that you have an opportunity to weigh in. So please don't hesitate to either raise your hand or send in a question if you have one. It looks like you might be on listening only mode, a couple of you, so that may be where you wanted to be on this, but if you're on your computer and listening, you're certainly welcome to send us in a message. And while you are contemplating that, I'm going to ask if any observer would like to make a brief comment. I'd like you to raise your hand, please, so that I know how many observers I might be needing to divide up. We're going to just have just about 2 minutes here that we'll be kind of dividing up amongst the observers. So you'll have a pretty short period of time. So I see Charles' hand is up. Are there any other observers who would like to make a comment besides that what has been sent in? Then let's go ahead and Charles, why don't you take maybe 45 seconds, let's say, and give that a whirl.
Okay, yeah, I just have a comment in regards to the Roosevelt neighborhood. It seems like on the edges of the Roosevelt neighborhood, you know, most of the areas are zoned as RSL or LR1, and most of the, pretty much all the edges of that urban village are arterials, whether it's 15th Ave or I-5 or 75th or 65th. It seems like those major arterials provide a buffer transition zone that maybe we could consider some higher density housing along those arterials than RSL or LR1, given all the amenities that are in that urban village. So I just think if we're going to go through all this process, we should try and get a bit more density where it makes sense. And I'm just not quite sure if RSL, for many of those lots, is you won't even get an extra unit if they're under 4,000 square feet. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. Are there any other observers who would like to make a comment? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the city. Did you have something on this map, Jeff?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge that we did see a number of events come over this call. One that I noted in particular was the question about patients or existing, and just that one, remembering that funds that are collected through HA used to acquire and preserve existing housing, and that this is just one of many strategies, and the city has a high priority to look for ways to preserve existing housing as well.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. All right, so what I'm going to do is go back to the presentation here, and then we'll have some next steps, and before we wrap up, we'll see if there are any other comments that folks have. So I'll go ahead and turn this back over to Nick.
Sure, thanks, Susan. This slide will show a few opportunities you have beyond the focus group process to continue reviewing the maps and offering feedback to the city. As you know, one good way to do that is at the Consider It website, hala.consider.it, where we have all the urban village maps posted, and we've gotten a lot of comments coming in every day, and city staff, we review those as they come in pretty often. There are 5 big open houses that we have planned over the next few months, and the first one is on December 3rd at the Bitter Lake Community Center. I won't read through all of those now. You see those in the center of the screen, but at the seattle.gov/HALA website, we have a good calendar page with a listing of all the details for those upcoming meetings. As I look at this, I actually think even just today we may have pushed one of those out into February. So we'll make sure that all of that is accurate. And then finally, as a reminder, the environmental impact statement that we're preparing, that's a big technical document that will study a few different scenarios for putting MHA into effect so that we can understand the trade-offs of different decisions. The draft version of that EIS will come out probably in February or March, so you can stay tuned for that. That's definitely something we will let you know about. And when we release that, there will be an official 45-day comment period. And then finally, on December 10th, we will have a drop-in session for the focus group participants at City Hall in the Bertha Knight Landis room, where we've had a few meetings in the past. That's scheduled from 9 a.m. until noon, and city staff will be there to talk one-on-one with any of you that would like to drop by and look at a map, ask questions, provide feedback. It's another way for us to, we're trying to allow many different opportunities for people to weigh in and make sure that we have captured all of your feedback on these draft maps.
And we did get a question about the February 10th map. So December 10th, right. Sorry, I think I said December 10th map. So on December 10th, that drop-in session that Nick was just speaking about, the public is welcome to drop in, just as the focus group members are. But similar to the focus group meetings, if we end up being fairly busy and the city staff need to be speaking to focus group members, they'll have a priority on December 10th. So you'll hear a little bit more about that on the next slide. But I just wanted to address that question that, yes, folks that are observers on this webinar are certainly welcome to come to that December 10th meeting. It may be, if there are a lot of focus group members, you may just have to stand by a little bit. Okay, so the next slide.
Finally, this timeline steps back a little bit. It shows, again, as we mentioned at the beginning, back in September, where we began the process of really looking closely at the draft zoning changes, first with 5 example urban villages, which included Crown Hill and Othello from this group. And then in October, having the full slate of urban village maps available both online and at our October focus group meeting. Tonight, you can see in the yellow box we've discussed the preliminary summary of your feedback on these maps. Thank you for all of your good comments and clarifications. As you continue to review this, and if other ideas come up, please get in touch with us directly anytime. And on December 10th, as we were just discussing, we'll have those drop-in hours at City Hall from 9 a.m. to noon. So if you're interested, whether you're in the focus group or member of the public, that's another good opportunity to come talk with us one-on-one. Looking to January, that's where we've planned on having some wrap-up event for this focus group process, which at that point will have really gone on for a full year from when you all first applied to be on these focus groups. And as you can see there, one thing we'd like to get your feedback on tonight or in the next few weeks as ideas come to you, we'd love to hear what you would like in terms of a format for that meeting. Just as a few examples for different options, we could have a gathering that involves individual focus groups like a typical meeting, or we could gather all the focus groups together like we did in September for a larger group meeting. We've also heard some suggestions about inviting all of the more than 700 people that initially applied to be in the focus group process. So that could be potentially an even larger gathering that involves focus group members that have gone through this, as well as others who initially expressed interest. We've also thought about asking for interested focus group members who might want to report out about the focus group process and the recommendations that this group has had, perhaps to the City Council. That could look like a City Council lunch and learn event, perhaps midday, with focus group participants that are interested in doing that. And all of that means that we have the opportunity to do something in the evening, during the day, on the weekend. We'd like to make this as useful and inviting as possible. So we probably don't have a ton of time to discuss this right now. If there are any burning comments on this, we can take them. But I'd just encourage you to think about how you might like that meeting to look, and then get in touch with us over the next couple weeks as we think about the format for that in January. And then finally, you'll see that probably after that meeting, either before or in the middle of February, we expect to bring together this focus group summary report that we've been looking at in draft format and capture all of the feedback we've heard from you so that our decision makers can use that going forward.
All right, thanks, Nick. Jeff, did you have any wrap-up kinds of remarks? So looking to see if there are any, I know we're just a couple of minutes over, see if there are any final hands up from any focus group members. Kathy, go ahead. Oh, actually, can we may not be able, Kathy, we don't have an audio pin for you, so I cannot unmute you. I'm sorry, but if you've got a comment that you wanted to make, just type it in the question box and shoot that over right quick. Otherwise, we will certainly get that. And again, we'll have a record of all of the questions and comments that were made, as well as the recording of this webinar, and the slides will be available for folks to take a look at. We have another webinar tomorrow, and that will be with our Hub Focus Group at the same time as well. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and conclude this.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
All right, yes, thanks very much, and we will be back in touch, focus group members, about what is going to be happening in January. Thank you.